Hi, this is Jeff. I'm an INTJ. I am joined by Zeon, the mystical ENTJ, who's just ethereal energy. This is I think we agreed on astrotype. This is our new channel. You may remember from INTJ equation. We also have Kim here, who we speculate is an ENFP. Today
Hello. Sorry.
we're gonna look at her birth chart and just kind of see if we could tie it to her type. And I'll let you take it away, Zeon.
I'll let you take it away. What do you want to look at first? What do you think? What do you think would be most important for trying to figure out what her typing is here, based on what you've seen so far in astrology?
Oh
Uh,
my gosh.
I
My
do see
cat just yelled in the background. I'm so sorry if anybody heard that.
Uh, it's
it.
Zelda,
a
what are you doing, girl?
it's
Okay,
it's a
bye.
feature for the video. Don't worry.
Yeah, I'm like a flight path of Air Force Base and airports. There's sounds like World War III above my head right now.
Okay, okay. And I didn't know if any of you heard it, but she just let out this like yowl that was like so sad sounding. And I was like, I fed you. Why are you so sad?
Yeah, I'm always talking to Len, and her cats are always like, making noise constantly, so it's all right.
Okay.
But I
That
noticed
was
her Sun and Venus are Aries conjunction, and it's opposed to her Libra Jupiter. Does that mean anything?
Oh man, that's a totally creepy combo. No, I'm kidding.
Oh no, is it?
No, no, the other ones that you have are though.
Oh no.
Um,
Don't be mean.
so okay, so Sun and Venus and Aries. I mean, obviously, you're going to be pretty outgoing. You're going to be pretty energetic, and you're going to be the person who always wants to take action immediately, all the time. And like with relationships, you're going to be really vivacious, and you're going to be really exciting to be around. It might also lead to a sort of vibe of being sort of self-centered and selfish, though, because that's like a really sort of me position. It's almost like being like a little kid, and like all you see is just like yourself. I mean,
Oh, that's unfortunate.
But Aries is also a very heroic position too, and is very good at facing down danger, trying to jump in to create new things, start new businesses, help people. So it's not entirely selfish. The opposite sign, Libra, can also be very selfish in some ways, but it's socially selfish instead of just sort of individualistic.
Huh.
If you've got, and since you had like chronic fatigue problems, you may have actually kind of like learn more life lessons that help sort of mute that more selfish approach to things. So that's okay. Um, Jupiter in Libra means that your enthusiasm, and it's in the sixth house. So Jupiter is like your will to explore and expand, and it sort of signifies your optimism. And if it's in Libra, then it's a very interpersonal kind of optimism. You want to interface with people all the time. You love talking to people. And
Yeah,
being the
because
sixth house means that it has to do with work somehow.
my goal one day is, like I said, to be a therapist. So that's pretty accurate.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Now, something that I didn't mention with the Aries Sun and Venus there is that ordinarily they would be fairly self-centric, but if you look, it's in the 12th house. So I'll circle that there. It's 12 here.
Uh-huh.
These are the boundaries, you know. That indicates a somewhat less selfish position for Aries in the sense that it becomes very self-sacrificing. Um,
Oh.
it leads to the exercise of a lot of empathy. So in some ways, you might look like you're sort of self-centric, but then when people get to know you, they see that how you act tends to be along the lines of trying to help others, always being concerned about their emotional states, being really
Mhm.
sensitive to everybody all the time, especially in terms of how you sort of interface with them.
Yeah.
Kind of sounds a lot like FI. A lot of FI users, including myself, get kind of labeled as selfish.
Yeah, oh yeah, I
Like
do too.
like I could see how I come off as potentially like selfish because like you said, a little like vivacious, like I like talking to people. Sometimes I can like accidentally interrupt when I don't mean to interrupt. And then sometimes as a way of like trying to identify with the other person, I'll like share my own story. But I've come to realize recently that if I don't like preface that by saying like, hey, I identify with you and like here's why, that like it can come off as extraordinarily selfish because it sounds like I'm trying to one up them, which is never my intention.
Right, yeah, or make everything about yourself, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And that is never my intention. It is literally my like I don't know, ADHD way of trying to identify with you being like, yeah, hey, same hat, same vibe. Like I get where you're coming from, but not
Yeah.
everybody takes it that way. So I have to be like on the lookout, like, okay, who would understand that and who is more like would see that as, me being self-centered. So
Uh-huh. Yeah. And so it's like a little bit self-centric, but potentially in a really good way. It's like you really enjoy interfacing with people. You really like helping people. Like this combination here, this big blue line and these two signs and houses with these planets is very like interfacing with people, kind of an orientation, and also really energetic in terms of trying to like work on stuff with them and trying to help them and trying to serve people's needs and whatever. So it's
I
actually,
do often become the therapist friend, like
yeah, yeah. It's a very helper-like position in lots of different ways. Practical help, emotional help, like anything. You really like
okay.
interfacing with other people, talking to them all the time, and you're very energetic about it, you know,
Yeah.
like bouncing off the walls practically. And they're like, whoa, whoa, slow down, a little less energy. So um, let's see. What next, Jeff? What do you think?
Ask about her, this is the complete opposite of mine. Her north node's in Sagittarius in the eighth house, and her south node is in Gemini over here in the second house. And mine's the complete opposite. It's Gemini in the north node in the eighth house, and Sagittarius in the second house.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's actually really strange, isn't it? So she has a north node in the same house that you do, but opposite signs. Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you want to talk about first with that, though?
Does that mean we're going to be mortal enemies and we must fight to the death?
No, no, it means that you have a really strong and bizarre connection.
Oh, cool.
What's
Yeah.
See that, Jeff?
what's an interesting dynamic is ENFP and INTJ is a pedagogue relationship and socionic. So it's like a teaching relationship, and we kind of teach each other life lessons basically. And well, the nodes is pretty much like your life.
Aw.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's exactly like the nodes because the nodes are sort of your inner maturation over a long period of time. Like it takes like your whole life, potentially
Wow.
longer. The nodes represent what you're trying to become. The north node represents what you're aspiring to become and what you have to develop in order to get balance for yourself internally. Whereas the south node, which it doesn't show on this chart, but it would be just like right here in Gemini somewhere, like right there. It shows where you're overdeveloped and you do things like too excessively
Hmm.
most of the time to your detriment. um, but not
Okay.
always. It can represent strengths that you can use if you're careful, but they can easily be taken too far. So, like, what do we mean? If your South Node's in Gemini here in the second house, what does that mean? Well, Gemini means that you are constantly bouncing off the walls and that you're so frenetic in your thought processes and how you interface with your environment and with other people that it's basically like you can't ever focus. Like there's no focus in your life.
Oh no. Oh no. Oh no, it's
Does that sound
calling
like
me
an
out.
ENFP? Yeah.
Oh no, it's calling me out because I have ADHD bad guys. Like
Yeah.
I am officially like diagnosed with ADHD and it's it's pretty bad.
And then
Which
we
is
wonder how much of that is
understandable.
actually just like your biology giving you ADHD versus your personality, if you know what I mean. So,
Yeah. Or like
yeah.
even a mixture of both, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yep. And if it's in the second house here, you know, you don't want to share anything. You're really concerned about sort of your own resources, your own survival. It's not
Wow.
meant to just be selfish, but it kind of comes off as being self-insulating to the point where like you want to cut yourself off from others. So it's really weird because it's like Gemini is a very social sign, but it's almost like you're being social just in order to get your own needs and resources.
I like to joke that I like have the mind of a border collie that's been like locked in the house and has nothing to do. And
Yeah.
like internally, like I have the brain of a border collie. So it's like I have to get ideas to chew on. I have to like, get stimulated in like internally, mentally. Um, and it's just really interesting that you like point out this Gemini in the South Node because that's very much like I do identify with that, like being internally, like thought wise, very busy.
Oh yeah, yeah. And the second house, I mean, like you're saying, it's like being trapped in the house. Well, the second house is like your own physical world apart from everybody else. We're just kind of
Hmm.
doing your own thing. And it's like you're going to be mentally bouncing around in that sort of realm, so to speak, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Apart from
It's like if
others.
if I do get overwhelmed, I do withdraw when I get overwhelmed, be it like emotionally, like physically overwhelmed, because like I said, I have that fibromyalgia, I have that fatigue, I have that like that chronic fatigue syndrome. I've got a
Yeah.
lot going on like body wise. So if I get overwhelmed like in my environment, I will withdraw and like my thoughts will go like everywhere.
And I know what that's
I
like
might even get
too.
anxious.
Yeah, no, because I actually have had chronic fatigue for like the last 23 years.
Holy
So
crap.
yeah, and it's been bad. So I know pretty much what that's like. But
I'm I'm so sorry to hear that
I
though.
know
Like I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy.
that's the exact
Um,
thing I always say too. It's terrible.
yeah.
Nobody gets it. But
Yeah. Able-bodied people think that you should inherently have this, set energy.
no, like as soon as you said chronic fatigue, I was like, okay, that probably forced you to learn a lot more lessons than other people did.
Yeah, I feel like
Yeah,
I had to develop FI like very quickly,
yeah,
very early on.
yeah. You probably had to reach down deep and develop your other functions more thoroughly than others too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had no other choice. Like,
Yeah, yeah, same here. Yep. So, but anyway, so okay, so we're talking about okay, so let's talk about the North Node part though. So we talked about the South Node and how you're kind of trapped in like your own little world and bouncing around in it. So like Gemini and Sagittarius are signs that have to do with stimulation, but like they have to do with like sort of oppositional stimulation types, you know? So like Gemini is more like mental and social stimulation and just like taking in information and kind of bouncing it back and forth between people. And then Sagittarius is more like stimulation in a bigger, more existential sense, where you're trying to understand the big picture. You're trying to become more philosophically enlightened and develop principles by which to live and act. You know. And so, if your North Node is in Sagittarius, then it's like, first of all, you got to develop more focus. But second, it's like, what do we mean by developing focus? How do you do that? It's like, well, you have to have principles that you come to understand are important to you, your own sort of morality system, your own sort of like higher self that you're reaching for. And then those will help you figure out how to operate. So you have to develop a sense of like what you really think is right and wrong, or what you think is like the best stuff in life that you need to go after, you need to go on a quest for. Oh, okay, well, that's pretty much it in a nutshell. But I was going to say, like, you got to find your sense of like the right principles to live life by, like a system of not just morality, but what principles apply to you as a person, what you think is most important in life to go after. And like, it's sort of
yeah.
like a value system, not quite.
It's almost like
Um,
an INTJ ENFP dichotomy, almost.
yeah,
Yeah. Like opposite ends of the spectrum. Like I'm like my what inspires me to go after is like that focus that you like INTJs have, and what inspires you guys, or like what inspires you, I suppose, in this instance is my ability to just sort of gather a lot of information on the surface level, maybe. I'm
yeah.
that's kind of what I'm getting here.
Yeah, like Gemini has to do with gathering information from just the immediate environment and from other people around you and stuff like that. So it's a little bit superficial in terms of like, the surface information and ideas you're coming across.
Yeah, like you
Sagittarius
get the
is
breadth of ideas at the cost of the quality. Sorry, go on.
something like that. Yeah. I mean, like Sagittarius has to do with like developing big, long-ranging perspectives rather than staying isolated in a small context, if that makes any sense.
No, that completely makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. And since it's in the eighth house, well, we were talking about that before on Discord. It's like the eighth house is the most complex one. And I mean, it has a bad reputation.
Oh no.
It's
Oh
okay. I
no.
have a thing in there too. But like,
I got a ton of
it's,
stuff in there.
yeah, you do. You both have North nodes in the eighth house, and my North node ruler is in the eighth house. But um, it's the house of sex and death and transformation, but also
Oh,
ecstasy and yeah, and
oh
psychology.
damn.
Yeah, yeah. So it's like, and it's, so if it's Sagittarius eighth house, then what are we talking about? I mean, we're talking about trying to sort of develop an academic and philosophical understanding of psychology for one thing, which is what you're doing, interestingly enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Sagittarius has to do with education, just like Gemini does, but Sagittarius has to do with higher education, like in universities where the ideas are harder to nail down and they're more sort of like I said, philosophical.
Mm.
But Sagittarius in the eighth house can also have to do with developing a lot of athletic strength in the realm of just exerting sheer force and power, which sounds strange, but it can manifest in a lot of different ways. So, in some ways, these sorts of people might really benefit from like really intense athletic activities too, where they have to output a lot of energy with a lot of focus, you know?
Hmm.
And that's where you have
Or,
fibromyalgia.
yeah, yeah, which is interesting because you have chronic fatigue. And I mean,
Yeah.
you know what's funny is that my North Node ruler is also in Sagittarius in the eighth house, same sign and house. Um,
Oh, interesting. So you have the same thing.
yeah, we both have chronic fatigue, and yet, you know, we have placements in this thing. It's like, what does that mean? I don't know. Um, it might mean that we really have to be careful about managing our biological energy with a lot of focus and build it up gradually because Sagittarius is an expansive sign. It wants to keep expanding things. It wants to make them into something really big and strong and amazing and stuff. But like
Yeah.
that takes time and effort, right? And the eighth house is the eighth house is kind of like the vast up and down of life, like the extremes that you have to swing between in order for time to proceed and for things to change and improve. So the eighth house involves a lot of extremes and ups and downs, and you have to really be able to get, you know, it's like you have to travel through hell in order to get to heaven, kind of a thing.
I mean, that makes sense. Like, weirdly enough, I can identify with that because,
Yeah, so can
like,
I.
yeah, yep. Like,
Isn't that crazy?
same hat.
So, what do you have to say, Jeff?
You said you were engaged. I'm just curious what type your fiance is, if you know.
My type is an Aquarius sun, a Pisces moon, and a Virgo rising. That's like the basics that I know, though. I don't know
I
anything
mean, it's
else.
MBTI type.
Oh, he's an ENTP.
Uh-oh.
ENTP. Okay.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh, indeed. We get on those NE trains and we say the weirdest stuff to each other. Like we can riff off each other for like ages. It's really funny, actually.
Might actually be really good though.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would say so. I am getting married to him, so
All right. That's interesting. We just did Jenna Ortega's recording her birth chart too, and I have the same node placement as her, which is interesting as well.
oh, I wonder if she's an INTJ. I bet she's an INTJ.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
pretty
my
sure she
guess.
is. All right, I guess we can move on to another placement. I see the Leo Virgo moon cusp and it's conjunct with Mars. That sounds kind of conflicting.
Yeah, or do you want to do the rulers of the nodes real quick?
Sure, we could do that. I'm still kind of trying to understand the whole ruler nodes or the ruler thing.
Yeah, it's really
I'm
funny.
still trying to understand everything.
Yeah, no, the stuff is like deceptively simple slash complex kind of a thing, you know, like it looks really simple on paper, but it's not. It is absolutely not. So Sagittarius, North Node, Gemini, South Node, that means that their planetary rulers are Jupiter and Mercury. So why it's like, and I always have to like tell people, okay, so like why do planetary rulers matter? Well, because basically what happens is the ruler of a sign where there's a placement forms a bridge between the two places, and they basically merge the house and sign energy, so to speak.
That's almost a
Interesting.
sextile, right?
uh,
Not quite, but
Close, yeah, close. Which would be a minor beneficial aspect. um, let's see, where's Mercury? It is right here. So these two things right here are connected.
So, Pisces and Gemini?
Yeah.
so how did you come up with that? Like that the rulers? It's always just depends on the sign.
Yeah, the signs and their planets are just inherently connected. So like Aries is inherently connected to Mars, for instance.
All right.
Oh,
So
that makes sense.
what does that mean?
Leo
Be more
Leo's
confident?
connected to the
Or-
sun. So when they're connected like this, they form a bridge, and what happens is wherever the ruler is, the energy. I should actually just hold on. It's arrows. I'll just again. It's actually flowing towards the ruler, so you get this, And this is important because it lends a lot of further characterization to the nodes and what they're doing, because this is basically where they're aiming at with what they're trying to accomplish. So like the Sagittarius North Node isn't just doing something, it's doing something for the sake of moving over to Jupiter over here.
Oh,
So
oh, that's interesting.
yeah, isn't it? So like then what happens is like it's flowing in that direction, but to some extent the signs and houses involved actually kind of combine their energy. And so
It
like
reminds me of yin yang.
yeah, yeah, there's a lot of yin yang stuff in this, trust me, it's ridiculous. This whole
Oh,
thing as a
yeah.
system is crazy, but like the North Node in Sagittarius in the eighth house is going to combine with the Jupiter and Libra in the sixth house. So your eighth house and your sixth house combined. What does that mean? Psychology becomes your job. Um,
Oh,
and Sagittarius combining with Libra means that you're using your higher understanding of things and the principles that you develop and the sort of focus that you develop for understanding the world around you and acting upon it beneficially to then interface with people, because Libra is a very like social sign. And
mhm.
so it has to do with talking with people all the time and maintaining channels of communication with them all the time and partnering with them. It
That
also
makes
has to
sense.
do with like societal ethics and stuff and justice, but because you know it's like
Mm.
the weighing scales. So when we're talking about, and since the ruler is Jupiter, that means that you're aiming to sort of express philosophical concepts and help people uplift themselves, because we're talking about like the eighth house, we're talking about Libra, which are very like interpersonal. So your Jupiter is trying to uplift others through the work that you do by using psychology, by using philosophical understanding of how life works, you know.
Yeah,
And so you're trying to share that enthusiasm with others and put it into something that you can give them that benefits them, right?
definitely.
You help them develop long range visions of their goals and lives that they can use to go do something and improve themselves, whatever it is, right?
Yeah, help them grow.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what the North Node is trying to do. It doesn't always work because North Nodes are hard to develop, and so are the rulers. It's a challenge. It takes a lot of time for you to grow into it, and that's okay. That's just
Well,
how it works.
I am getting started. Like I am like, trying to like do yoga twice a week. I'm like looking at like colleges like to go back to in my like now that I'm in my 30s and now that I kind of have a better idea of what I like, what my calling is, I'm looking at
Yeah.
colleges. I'm like I'm feeling that pull to self-improve so that I can then pass that on to others in the future.
And that's really cool too, because like Sagittarius and Jupiter kind of are like a personal calling. I mean, we usually talk about like personal quests and like how you're supposed to find your higher self or your real self or whatever. It's like a calling though, because it really does involve physical travel or mental distances in terms of the perspectives you're trying to integrate. And it also involves foreign things. So like if you start doing things like yoga, or you start like taking on like Taoist philosophy or something, like that's a very Sagittarian thing to do, because to us that's like a wildly different kind of perspective and way of doing things that we're trying to use to kind of like improve things here, compare and contrast, whatever.
That's really interesting.
And so like fueling your desire to go see and do a lot of foreign things, foreign philosophical systems, even just go to like distant places and see how other people live could really help you. So if you want to do more education, that might help you a lot.
That's definitely something to keep in mind. And I've always been interested in traveling.
Yeah.
I might as well like save up my money after like the wedding, of course, and maybe like see if I can travel anywhere. I've
Yeah.
actually like always wanted to. I know it sounds silly, and I know it's just kind of like, oh no, she's one of those otakus and anime girl. I've always wanted to go to Japan just to like visit the hot springs, see their culture, and like not like the popular like areas where, like Tokyo, but I mean like the smaller villages and like just
Yes.
just kind of understand like how they live and like
See
what
their
it's
everyday
like.
life, really get into the
Yeah.
reality of it. Yeah, no, I went to Japan at the end of college as a study abroad thing. We went to all these game companies, and it was really like useful for me. I think
It was enlightening.
it is, and it really gives you a sense of the place and the people, and even history there. So
That's so cool.
it was
Oh,
really,
I want to do that.
I felt it was really important in my development. It might be for you too. And any other places that you just want to go? Like it doesn't matter what it looks like to somebody else. It's like, no, maybe you just need this to feed your spirit, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's It's always been Japan. I have like ever since I was like 8 years old, I've been like, I want to go to Japan. I want to see Japan. I want to experience it. And here I
Well,
am at 30, never having gone to Japan. So maybe that'll change one day.
yeah, with this stuff, it might just take time for you to get there. And it's like, so since we're on the topic, it's like, what is it about Japan that you like a lot? What do you usually think about when you're thinking about Japan that like drives you to go there?
I think about how like as a society, like they're very safe. And somehow they have managed to build a society where people are safe and people are like, like kids are out like walking the streets like at night
Yeah.
because it's that safe. And it's just like, what can we take from that? What can we learn from a society that has managed to keep like, you know, their community so safe that children as young as like practically like 6 years old can just be walking about and doing like errands for their family. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
what can we bring from that?
Now, here's an interesting thing that you just said. I mean, so I just said that your Gemini South Node's in the second house. Well, the second house is a sense of personal security and safety. And so what
Yeah.
happens with the North and South Node is that the South Node, usually like you're reaching for the North Node by using the South Node as a foundation.
Mhm.
But here's something that's very interesting. So, like, if you go to Japan, you find out that they're, or I shouldn't say find out, you see them being safe. You experience their society. You see how sort of, I guess, solid and stable and secure everything feels there.
Mhm.
Then you might also realize that you don't have anything else to compare it to unless you've like lived in like a really horribly dangerous US city or something, right?
Yeah.
And you'll be like, okay, wait a minute, maybe I can't figure out how this South Node second house position can be served only by going to a place that's safe. Maybe I also have to go to a place that's dangerous to compare and contrast. So you might actually, after that, you might be like, wait, this is dumb. I didn't learn anything. And be like,
Ah,
I have to go to like Pakistan or something and like carry a
oh
gun
God.
and like, yeah, like go somewhere like dangerous. I mean, Pakistan's not the most dangerous place. You could go into Russia or something. But
Oh
like the
God, I'd be
point is,
terrified.
you go into the outback in Australia, um, somewhere in Africa, because like the eighth house involves danger. And so like you have to get used to facing danger, and Sagittarius involves perspective. So like you might have to go somewhere dangerous in order to compare and contrast Japan with that place to then figure out why Japan functions the way it does, because you only have one data point there.
Yeah.
So that's all really interesting, actually. And then I assume with this Libra positioning, you would put that into the work you're trying to use to help people also
Yeah.
feel safe or also overcome their own things that are fearful to them.
Yeah, I
Like,
want to specialize like in trauma, like if I can, like like treating people who have experienced trauma. So,
yeah, yeah, and trauma is an eighth house thing for sure. So that's not surprising. But then we also have, and this is the other ruler. This is the downswing part. This is the not as fun part. This is the ruler of the South Node here in Pisces, this Mercury, and it's in the
mhm.
11th house. And that, let's see. Well, I mean, obviously Mercury shares the traits of Gemini. It covers both Virgo and Gemini, so it serves double duty. But if your Mercury is your South Node ruler, then you really have like a limited mental perspective, and you're always
Oh,
ultra distracted to the point that like it actually cripples your life. Like you can't focus on anything ever. And
I do have problem. Like I literally have to take medication just to function. And even then, like apparently I metabolize the medication that helps me focus so quickly that it barely does anything. So you're not wrong. And I don't know how to fix it.
but like if it's in Pisces, then it becomes self-deluding, and like it's like you're in like fantasy land all the time
Oh
with
no.
your crazy thoughts. Yeah, it's like Energizer Bunny, except like it's not just ADHD physically, it's ADHD mentally. There's a difference.
Oh man. Okay. Is there like a way to fix that? I don't want to be self-deluded. Like,
Well, we'll talk about that in just a second. It's also in the 11th house, and the 11th house is the house of social collaboration. And since Gemini and Mercury are already fairly social, basically what this means is that you are so dialed into your social network and so up on interfacing with people constantly, that's part of the problem, which is funny because, like, you know, of course, on this other side, we're talking about you interfacing with people for like work and stuff, but it's a little bit more focused and regimented. You know what I'm saying? Like over here,
It has boundaries, whereas here it's like there's not enough boundaries with the socialization, maybe.
yeah, yeah, it's completely
Mm.
unbound. It's completely insane. Pisces is known to be not only self-deluding but self-unraveling. Like it doesn't really know what the hell it's doing. It's doing all this crazy stuff it's completely unaware of, and it's bouncing all over the place. And it's doing this in a very social context though. So like you're almost like addicted to social interaction and attention. You know?
Interesting.
Yeah.
No, that's not the best look.
And usually the
So,
South Node and its ruler feel absolutely terrible to the person, whereas outside observers are like, oh, this doesn't seem so bad. But to you, it's like, this sucks, right? So,
yeah. I'm trying to think if I identify with that or not. Like I used to be like more of a people pleaser to the point where like before I even question like, hey, how am I feeling? I would like jump into something and already be like doing my people pleasing thing. So like in that way I can definitely identify with like just there's just needs to be more boundaries. There needs to be more like like you said, like it needs to be a little bit more regimented, like with my Sagittarius Libra deal over there. Um, I need to just chill out a little bit. Like I need to
yeah.
literally have some boundaries. And I mean, I am in therapy, so like hopefully that does the trick. But like, man, I don't know what else outside of that I could even be doing.
Yeah, and it's just going to take time. Like you're not necessarily going to figure out how to address this quickly, but the point of this is not to give you like a lot of specific details, to give you big areas of themes that you can work within to be more aware so that you can find more things to help yourself. It's kind of like, you know, a guide going forward kind of a thing.
Yeah, kind of like a vague like FAQ. Like these are the themes of
Yeah.
your life. These are the things to watch out for that you could like pitfalls you could fall into. So I get it.
And something that I tell people too is like take all these big themes that we're describing and then just keep brainstorming as you go forward and keep generating new ideas and perspectives on them, and you will find more ways to improve. You know, the people
Yeah.
who work at this are the ones who meet developmental milestones. Those milestones are things that you can't necessarily rush, but you can go past them without actually meeting them. So there are a lot of people who like go sailing past that stuff. They never develop themselves. They don't know what they're doing. And then one day they wake up and wonder why their life is absolute hell, you know?
Yeah.
So, but yeah. So do you have any like questions about any of this stuff so far?
Um, I mean, so far it seems pretty clear cut. I'm understanding everything you're telling me here.
Yeah. Okay.
So I wouldn't say I have any like overarching questions as of
O-
yet.
Okay. Awesome. All right, Jeff, what do you think?
Do you want to talk about the Leo down, or not the Leo, but the moon down here, or do you want to just wait?
Yeah, we can do that real quick. So we've got Mars and the moon down there, and they're pretty close. I mean, it's close enough to be, I would say, a conjunction, a loose conjunction. And the moon looks like it's right on the cusp of Leo. So I would even say that that's probably a Leo moon. It's hard to tell though. What do you think? Like internally, emotionally, do you feel really sensitive or do you feel like really expressive and creative?
I feel like I'd say like internally, like emotionally, I'm a little more sensitive.
Okay, so it might be falling more in Cancer then. Um, so if that's the case, it is definitely in the fourth house though, which is a confusing factor because the fourth house is just like Cancer in some ways. So even if it was a Leo moon, it might still be a fourth house moon, which is still in the realm of sensitivity. But
That's interesting because like a long time ago, my like grandfather, or was it my uncle? It was one of them did my birth chart, and they said that I had a Cancer moon, so I've never seen it like fall under Leo before.
yeah, if it's really close to the border right there like that, then it might actually just be going over the line, but it's hard to tell. Sometimes people have a combination, sometimes it's one or the other. So you just ask them like, what is this thing like for you? You know, how does it tend to act? But
Yeah.
if your Mars and your moon are close together, that's still a really aggressive combination for your emotions. So like when it comes to your feelings, your anger and your feelings tend to manifest in the same places at the same time. And your instincts and your feelings also manifest in the same place at the same time, which would mean that when you're acting instinctively, your feelings feel like they're the same thing as your instincts. You don't really necessarily differentiate between the two.
Huh.
Which means that like if you have like an animalistic reaction towards something or you get mad at somebody, like you get emotional just like that, drop of a hat, you know. Or
Hmm.
if you have an emotional need, you feel an instinctive desire to immediately act upon it and go charging towards it as fast as you can to grab it and seize it for yourself. So yeah. um let's see, the moon is squarely in the third house. uh let's see, not the moon, Mars, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mars being in the third house is once again a very social position. So like when you're acting on your own sort of base animal instinct, it's an instinct that drives you towards interaction. Once again, more interaction, right? The
Hmm.
third house is kind of the house of community and like local contexts and friends and back and forth verbal processes and stuff like that. It can
Yeah.
also involve social media and stuff, but maybe not quite as much. It involves teaching through direct dictation and writing and things like that. So
That's my Mars.
yeah, you might have sort of like a drive to write and teach and relate in some ways and to create community initiatives. But when they
Well,
fall through and fail, you might also get really pissed off about it. I don't know.
right now I actually do like have my own business teaching piano,
Oh,
like
awesome.
right now as we speak. So you're not necessarily wrong that I feel a drive to like teach and write and things of that nature.
Yeah, and the moon might even, I mean, the moon's over the line into the fourth house, but it's so close to Mars that they're still kind of blending together. I mean,
Hmm.
the moon being in the fourth house kind of indicates like, okay, emotionally, you really need to feel like you have a home to come back to. You really need to feel like you can have a
Yes.
family. You really need to feel like for
Yeah.
you, that's a really important for your emotional health, you know?
Hmm.
Yeah.
No, that's definitely valid. Like I definitely feel like I find emotional safety in my fiance actually. Like we have like cultivated this relationship that feels like really stable and like the healthiest relationship I have ever been involved in.
Yeah.
Um,
And we only have like
because
a
I
minute left on this, but real quickly, like,
oh right.
how do you express anger within the context of that sense of hominess with the other person?
One
I
minute.
used to be a little bit passive aggressive. I've
Oh,
worked on it in therapy and I am not nearly as passive aggressive as I used to be. I communicate when I'm mad now, but it used to be my instinct.
okay. So yeah, but anyway, so you were talking about how you weren't able to regulate your emotions. Is that because they were just too too spontaneous, too hard to handle, or like what was that?
I think largely it was because probably because of the way I was raised. I was raised in a culture where like if you had a big feeling that was like a negative feeling, like anger or uncomfortableness or whatever, you were expected to just kind of like deal with it. And I was never really appropriately taught how to regulate as a
Hmm.
child. So I think like largely, yeah, it's largely that they were spontaneous and they just felt like, oh my God, what am I supposed to do with this? I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this. Like,
Yeah, so almost like feelings that are like way too big to handle.
yeah,
Well,
exactly.
and that's the funny part, though, is that's actually kind of more of a North Node thing than a Moon thing because the eighth house has to do with extreme feelings, you know,
Yeah.
and Sagittarius has to do with things that are really gigantic. So
So it feels like overwhelming. Like,
yeah, Sagittarius is overwhelming, and the eighth house would be extreme feelings and explosions and stuff,
yeah,
and like trying to keep secrets and stuff like that.
that makes sense.
Hmm. Like when it comes to your moon and Mars down here, it's maybe a little bit more like you just, I don't know, you have like a really strong emotional drive to just act on things really, really quickly. And there's no
Yeah.
differentiation between like what you feel like you want and need versus like what you're feeling, I guess. But it
Like in
also,
the moment.
yeah, in the moment, yeah. And then, but it also drives you to connect with the community. It drives you to do things like what you were talking about, teaching piano. So, I mean, it's a good and bad thing, like everything else in the chart, basically. So.
I mean, that's fair. That makes sense.
Hmm.
And I noticed it opposes her Neptune and you're close to Uranus too. Is that anything significant?
Sort of. So, being on the fourth house cusp down here at the bottom, and I don't know why this isn't exactly at the bottom, but it should be. Usually the fourth house cusp is at the direct bottom of the chart, but this MC that you see here is literally the midheaven. Like if you were looking directly up into the sky at the time and place where you're born, then this is where everything would be, at the very top of the sky. And so this thing down here with the fourth house, this dividing line here at the fourth house, this is like right underneath your feet. um, so this is like the inner world down here. So like your aggression and your feelings are kind of maybe internalized a little bit, you know.
Yeah.
Um, you don't necessarily always directly express them, which leads people to think that maybe you're kind of a vulnerable creature in some ways. Um, but up here with this Neptune and this Uranus, the Neptune is the trident, you know, because it's like the ocean.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
That's actually really cute.
And this weird symbol is Uranus because Uranus is weird. Um,
Hey,
so
sorry.
like the MC, the medium coli, the which is the outer world, reaching outwards from yourself, also is synonymous with career and status and trying to face difficulty in life and facing your fears, because that's the outer world as opposed to the home and safety and comfort down in the bottom here in the fourth. And they're both in Capricorn, which is the sign that correlates to the 10th house, the sign of like bare-fisted, like hard-ass reality and facts, right? Like, so when it comes
Yeah.
to like, so your Neptune represents kind of like your ability to connect to the cosmos. It's your spirituality. It's like your empathic impulse. It's your ability to act as an empty vessel that other things can fill up, to empty yourself, to sacrifice yourself, things like that.
Yeah.
And it also has to do with imagination. The Uranus that's right on top of it has to do with your ability to collaborate with people and invent new ideas and be sort of like a social and intellectual strategist. And
Hmm.
if those two things are in Capricorn, really close to the 10th house like that, that indicates that they're trying to enact themselves within the realm of having a career, but also in a way that's very realistic and very sober and very like, this is how systems and reality actually work, and we have to do this, you know, as opposed
Yeah.
to feeling centric Cancer that's like, I want what I want, I just don't care what's going on, you know.
Yeah.
The Capricorn is very responsible. It's very like uh very it's a trooper, you know. It
Yeah.
gets the job done and it doesn't really care what else is going on. It doesn't listen to people's whining. It doesn't even listen to its own emotional needs necessarily. So it's really interesting that your moon is opposite all that stuff that's up there in Capricorn in the 10th house, because there's a sort of partnering dynamic between these two positions. You got Mars and the moon on one hand, you've got Neptune and Uranus on the other, and they can be helpful to each other going between these two sides, and they can also be like conflicted. So
Yeah.
sometimes it's like you feel this really deep spiritual need and social need to develop a career for yourself, and it's like this thing that keeps pulling you in that direction. It's like it's not always easy to fulfill, and it since it opposes this moon and this Mars, it's like it's almost like sometimes maybe you feel like you're personally being crushed by this need to go out and formulate this career to accomplish a greater aim in the world and the universe, you know.
Yeah.
um, but at the same time, the fact that your Mars and Moon are in a more sensitive position can also help you a lot with that, because it aids you in being able to enact empathy on a larger scale for the public world around you and collaborate with people. So
Yeah.
it feels a little bit difficult, but it also is kind of like a helpful dynamic too. I don't know if any of that correlates to your actual experience, but
No, I'd say it does correlate because like there have been many a time where I tried to literally just get a regular freaking job, you know, like, oh, I'm gonna be a waitress. Absolutely did not do a good job. I like ended up like literally I got fired from being a waitress because one, I would forget the orders, and two, I would get so sucked into conversations with customers talking about their lives and their struggles that I wouldn't go to the other customer and like do my job. And so I got fired, which I don't blame her because oh no. That
that's
did
actually really
not.
funny. Yeah, because
Yeah.
like, you know, Neptune is also the planet of forgetting things on purpose. You know that. There's actually
Forgetting things on purpose.
it's a feature instead of a problem. So like Neptune and Pisces in the 12th house have to do with forgetting things on purpose. And by the way, like your Venus and Sun are also in the 12th house, which is this house of forgetting. And why would you ever want to do that, right? Like this sounds like it's really stupid, but it's not. It's actually a good thing because the opposite thing, which is the sixth house and Virgo, and Mercury are actually extremely overtaxed and overstressed all the time, being focused on trying to get everything done constantly and trying to work through stuff. So there are a lot of problems in life that you have to just kind of sublimate away and forget about with Neptune and Pisces, or you can't handle them. They'll just completely rip you apart. And it's
Damn.
really funny that you're forgetting in your job because it's almost
That was
like,
it
yeah,
just wasn't a good fit for me. Like I was
right.
like all gung ho. I was just like, I'm gonna be the best waitress ever. No, no, you're not.
Well, and Neptune's delusional, but like that's okay because it's like it's part of how it operates. So like you just need to find a career space where forgetting and being empathic with people and being like really unconscious and collaborating with others. Because you said you just stop and talk with people constantly. It's like, well, you need a career where that stuff is rewarded, where that's like a feature of what you're doing.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah.
Yep. So and yeah, and of course with the Mars and Moon down here being so close to each other, third and fourth house, that's also very collaborative, very like I want to go help people as like a sort of base impulse that you just feel like you have to go do. So it's no surprise, right?
Yeah. It
Yeah,
really isn't.
yeah.
But like I would be like talking to people, they would and people would like randomly like open up to me about their life too. And like I wouldn't want to walk away and be rude and oh, it was a whole thing.
And by the way, Jeff, this is interesting because look at this. These are actually in a relatively this you can even see the red line here. So you can see that these are actually in a big square to each other.
So it works against her.
Sort of it can work against her, but it also pushes her to be better and it can also make her a very unique and dynamic person. So yes, it's challenging, but like this Aries, Venus and Sun over here is in the 12th house. And that's another reason that you're going to be like really tuned in to trying to empathize with people wherever you go. Just like you can't seem to stop yourself. And that will seem like it's to the detriment of your career up here, but maybe it isn't. Maybe it pushes you to find the right one, and it actually turns out to be really good for you. So,
Yeah. I mean, here's to hoping.
yeah, yeah, I think that would probably be a really good career for you. We'll see, but
Yeah. No, I do. I feel a draw towards it. Like I feel like it's something I could actually be really good at if I put my mind to it and I become more self-disciplined.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
the
you could,
Sagittarius North Node, just get
yeah,
that focus.
focus, cut through the crap in the eighth house, really learn to deal with conflict and chaos with lots of
Hmm.
focus. Yeah, just so and then maybe you can implement these planets in your Capricorn 10th house and really be professional with them. It sounds
Yeah.
really strange being like professionally like deluded and
Profession
fantastical and yeah.
like professionally uh oh, I had a word, but I forgot it. Ironically. Crap. All right, sorry, let's continue.
Yeah, well, no, but you get the picture here.
I
So
yeah.
All right. I guess it kind of here alone, but we're Pluto over here in Scorpio. That seems kind of dark.
yeah, it is. I have one in Scorpio too.
What is it?
It is Pluto and Scorpio. It's this thing that looks like an eye over the cross.
Looks mysterious.
It is. It's considered the energetic and metaphysical mastery of mind over matter. I think that's what the glyph means.
Oh.
And Pluto and Scorpio, as you know, are like literal planet and sign of darkness, just like the eighth house over here.
Mhm.
Um, let's see. So this is interesting because the seventh house right here with this boundary starts in Scorpio, which means that the ruler of the seventh house is Pluto, so it's already in its own sign. So it just goes in a big circle. It doesn't relate to anything. It doesn't connect to anything else.
It's its own little landmass,
Yeah,
basically.
It's
yeah,
very close to the descendant, right?
yeah. The seventh house is the descendant. Yep, that's how that is the indication of how you form relationships, whereas the ascendant is kind of the indication of how you individually behave.
Interesting.
So,
So
so with the Scorpio descendant, I have the same thing, by the way.
mhm.
You tend to partner with people who are a lot more intense and deeper, you know, in terms of how they operate and think and act. And if Pluto is there, then you are very, I mean, I don't know exactly what I'm allowed to say on this
I'm
podcast.
attracted to toxic people. Is that it?
You could be,
I used to
or
be.
or you're attracted to people who are also extremely loyal, because toxicity and loyalty are two sides of the same coin.
Hmm. Politely disagree, but continue.
Well, because like if you think about it, why are people toxic? Because they get like kind of enmeshed, right?
Because they get kind of what?
Enmeshed.
I suppose, but that's not like true loyalty in that case. That is a dysfunctional enmeshed relationship, which isn't very healthy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But
So
why? But
you
why do
can
they get enmeshed, and why do they seek this strong dynamic of being attached to somebody that they want to be toxic with?
probably because of their childhood, to be honest.
And there's a lot of emotional and psychological problems there, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I
Well,
used
so
to be attracted to people like that. I used to be. And then I went to therapy, and it's kind of like my attraction has shifted a little bit. I no longer find those behaviors as attractive as I used to since starting to get healthier and starting to like kind of heal myself a little bit. I don't find those behaviors attractive anymore.
that's really fascinating. And so, like, what do you find attractive in partnership now?
I find, honest and open communication attractive. I find patience and kindness attractive.
hmm
I find a good sense of humor attractive. Kind of it kind of did a 180. Like I like naturally used to be attracted to, like you said, these intense individuals. And now I like kind of feel like I see it for what it truly is. Like it's not healthy, it's not good, it doesn't help each other grow as individuals.
Yeah,
You know
okay.
what I mean?
So there's a lot going on here. This is really complicated as usual. These two are really complicated, but like basically, you would start off having really toxic kinds of attractions, especially with Pluto here, because Pluto is basically your own psychological woundedness or your ability to attract it into your life by the same token, you know?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
but the thing is, even though these represent your subconscious wounds and problems, they also represent the ability to bring them out into the light of day and fix them with honesty. And
Yeah.
Scorpio is the sign, like Scorpio and Taurus are the signs that are always trying to be honest about things, but they're being honest about different things. So Scorpio is psychologically honest and like really courageous about facing the darkness, quote unquote, and Taurus is courageous and just simply observing what's in front of it physically with the senses, which doesn't sound like it takes courage, but sometimes it does. And so, like Scorpio and Pluto here with your seventh house, it's like, well, you've been developing for a very long time a greater sense of like psychological health in relationships. It just takes time to get there because it's a process.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not to mention the
Yeah.
fact that your North Node is in the eighth house. So,
So again, we're like trying to move forward, trying to focus, trying to like do all this stuff. So it probably
yeah,
plays into.
specifically in the realm of psychology too,
Yeah.
and the spirit and things like that. So, yeah. So, and you had a kind of like an intense reaction to me even saying like, yeah, you want these intense people. Like, oh no, that's not real loyalty. That's
No,
toxicity. And it's like,
no, I'm saying that because it was important to me. It was because like I came to this realization like, oh my God, I'm like seeking these people out because of my own woundedness, because of my own toxicity. So
that's
it's
right.
something I worked very hard on to try to fix. So when you said that, I was just like, no, 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 I worked hard on that. I'm telling you, if
Yeah,
that's not healthy or good.
and so like the thing is, if we're talking about relationships, you're likely to have an intense reaction because of the sign of the planet here.
That's funny.
Yeah,
You're
but
just like, oh, that's such a Pluto and Scorpio thing.
yeah, in the seventh house, haha. Uh, yeah, it's ridiculous. But yeah, no, basically, so and as you go forward, it's like you have also developed by working on yourself, you've developed a greater capacity to help others too in a very relational way where you just talk with them one on one kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So, but it is very dark. It's like make no mistake, it can have extreme good and extreme bad, and that's just how it tends to be. So,
No, I definitely would agree with that. Like
and
it
you said like
has
your
shown
stuff just did
itself.
like a 180, so that's also flipping between extremes, right?
What was that?
You said that your relating style did a 180.
It I mean, it did a 180 like in theory, but it took like a long time. It was a gradual process. It wasn't like one day a flip, like a light switch just flipped. It was very, like I was just like, oh, hey, that isn't very nice after all. They should respect my boundaries and I should respect their boundaries. And like just little pieces every day. Like every time I had a psychology session, like I would like start putting these like things together and be like, oh yeah, it should be this way.
Well, and you can see that like the ascendant is in Taurus and that Pluto's opposite points is over here in Taurus as well. And Taurus is the sign of moving through things very slowly in order to try to do them correctly.
Yeah.
So, wherever the thing about Pluto is that probably more than any other planet, the opposite part of the wheel where it's located is actually also an important point unto itself. Because why? Because Pluto is a sort of extremes and flip-flopping oriented planet. So, like, in order to psychologically balance itself, the opposite point, wherever it is, we call it the Pluto point, is an important place to figure out how to psychologically balance yourself. And basically, Taurus in the first house, I mean, you already have a relatively slow, methodical approach to things. But with Pluto being in the opposite position, it basically means that you need to establish more boundaries for yourself and let other people do the same thing instead of seeking out people who are trying to have no boundaries over here, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
You,
Yep.
you nailed it. I feel like the stars are like kind of calling me out. Not calling me out, but they're reading me. They're like, the stars are just like, oh no, we know you.
Well, this is a really
Like,
easy interpretation for me because guess what? Your Pluto point right here is right on top of my North Node in the
oh,
exact
that's
same sign
funny.
and house, no less.
That's really funny.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
It's
So,
almost like we were all destined to work together and like talk
yeah,
and like communicate and learn about each other. Oh, it's so interesting.
we converged across the universe and through strange dimensions of time and space. So, Jeff, what do you have to say?
Yeah, very interesting there.
I feel
Uh,
like you've just kind of been quietly absorbing.
Yeah.
yeah, I definitely don't mind letting the extroverts talk.
Sorry.
Uh, that's okay.
We
I do
That's
see
why
it.
I keep asking you.
Yeah, I do see a trine here. I think we have maybe one time to talk for one more aspect. I don't want this to go on too long, but
Not 2 hours.
yeah,
Chiron,
that's valid.
North Node, and your Sun and Venus. Looks like they makes a trine, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, it's a little heart.
Yeah, there's also a couple of stronger trines right here and right here, but grand trines, even if they're loose, like this big freaking triangle here, are still pretty powerful aspects, you know. A grand trine indicates that you have placements in all three of a certain kind of element of sign. So in this case, it's the fire signs. You got Aries, you got Sagittarius, you got Leo. Okay. So let's see. What do I want to say about this? I mean, Chiron. I mean, Chiron's just an asteroid, but it still might be significant if Chiron is the centaur healer in Greek mythology. He was like a doctor.
Oh.
But it indicates where you have an impulse to heal in a sort of general metaphorical sense, heal the world, heal yourself. But it's also a place where like you feel a certain sort of like woundedness. And it's not necessarily a psychological woundedness, although it could be. It's more of like a sort of weird physical like gut woundedness, maybe, you know?
Oh. Maybe it's like my chronic fatigue and my fibromyalgia. Maybe that's kind of like a little like, hey,
Maybe.
here's there's that.
Chronic viral infections in the gut have been implicated in chronic fatigue, so and also the
Yeah.
brainstem. But like
Yeah. I did not know the brainstem part, actually. We should probably talk about that later.
oh, I have so many. Oh my gosh, it's just not even funny.
Oh my
So
God, hit me up.
yeah, yeah, we'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
But so your Sun and Venus over here in Aries are in
Mhm.
agreement with your North Node in Sagittarius and your Chiron in Leo. This and given the houses that they're in, 12, 8, 4. Those are all water houses. Those are all emotional, empathic, psychological houses. I think you
Interesting.
can see where we're going with all this. It's like your North Node desire to develop into something specific over the course of your life, the developmental direction you need to go in to really become who you're supposed to be, is basically in strict agreement with your sense of ego and your sense of relationship style. which is in agreement with this sort of like healer within you. And they're all in water houses, which means that they all have to do with empathy and emotions.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
It's just so cool how specific this can get. Like I think that's the part that catches me by surprise. Like you said, oh, these big overarching like themes, and I'm just like, no, this is getting pretty specific, especially the, like Pluto and Scorpio. That was very specific. That was aimed at me. Like that
Yeah, it
was
was aimed at your
very
heart.
like that was just like, oh, okay. So the stars knew about that. Cool. Like crap. Like that's something big there.
I
One
might
thing
say this. Oh, go ahead.
One thing that caught my eye, it's like you said, it's a wounded healer, and you talked about the North Node in the eighth house is kind of about healing other people, and she wants to be a therapist.
Yeah, and make no mistake, like if we're talking about the eighth house specifically with the North Node, it's not even just healing other people. It is an intense, symbiotic, close, all-consuming relationship that has to scour people down to their barest components in a visceral, bloody way.
Oh
It is
geez.
not
Jeez.
pretty. It is extreme. The eighth house is extreme. The fourth house is more like, oh, let's all come together and have fun and talk about things and get our feelings out like it's like a family home environment. But the eighth house is something else.
I
It's
definitely feel like, oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I definitely feel like if, I were to become a practicing therapist and I have my own little business and I like see people, I would definitely like not like let them, how do I put this? I would definitely scour them down, but in a very nice way. Like
Right, yeah.
I would cause them to see their deepest trauma, but like in a way where I'm kind of like, I'm holding your hand through it, but it's gonna be hard. Like
Yeah, it's
make
going to
no
be hard,
mistake.
and you got to assert. So, like, this is all in fire signs, right? We got fire signs. Well, basically, it means that you're going to have to use a lot of aggression in a lot of different ways, and it's going to be, kind of just trust me and do what I'm telling you to do, and I'm going to lead you through this, and we're going to, and then you need to express yourself genuinely too. That's the fire sign thing. So, kind of encouraging other people to express themselves genuinely in a fire sign way as well. So,
I mean, I would do my best to meet people where they're at in whatever way they need and however they choose to go on that journey. But I would, always be aiming like, let's go deeper. Let's really think about this. Let's, you know what I mean?
yeah, and so like
Let's
you're
see what the root is.
Yeah, no, exactly. And like, so if your Sun and Venus are in Aries, I initially said that could be a selfish position, but it's in the 12th house, and it's like in a trine position with the North Node and this other thing. I mean, it's actually kind of like your sense of ego, your sense of I'm really important, listen to me, and your relationship style are like right on top of each other. So sometimes people can like really get bowled over by you, but like it also can be really helpful for driving people towards their potential with this psychological position you're trying to develop, and then this Jupiter that's in your like the house of work and relating to them. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And
Very,
like, oh, go ahead.
I was just to say very cool, but go ahead.
Oh, I was literally about to say that this was really cool too.
Yeah.
Same thought.
And there's a lot more to explore here too. I mean, the eighth house is also not just the house of bloody scouring and psychological healing, but it's also the house of like now we're rising up to heaven, and this is like your guardian angels coming to help you, and now you're gonna also become one and
Oh,
help other people, sort of thing.
that's that's definitely really deep.
Yeah, and it can be a really religious placement. Sagittarius can have to do with like moral systems and religions. The eighth house can be a very spiritual place, a place of fire and faith, you could say.
It's really interesting because like I personally am agnostic, right? So like I believe in the possibility of souls. I believe in the possibility of things that are currently beyond our scientific understanding.
Hmm.
But like largely I'm not very like religious. Like I believe in the possibilities, but like I don't really like subscribe to a religion. Like I am, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, Jeff,
So maybe I just need to explore that.
I was gonna give like a final like sense of or piece of advice for like the nodes with each of these videos. You want to do that now? You would want to do anything else?
I think that'd be a good place to probably wrap it up. And if
Okay.
questions,
So
Yeah, it seems like a good
so
idea.
it's like the advice here is with this Gemini South node, in the second house, get out of your own little world and start like find ways to try to focus yourself and be a little bit more practical and realistic and grounded. But you're going to do that by traveling, and not just traveling. When you travel, look at the sort of dark underbelly of where you're going. It sounds really weird because you want to go to Japan to see like how they're able to live in safety and security, but it's like look at the religious and spiritual dynamics. Look at what's going on underneath the shiny facade. You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
wherever you go, always look for the secret and hidden information, the secret world underlying all those different places and perspectives. And that will help you become enlightened to then help other
Okay.
people work on their issues in your job.
And if I can afford it,
Yeah,
I'll do it.
or even just like imaginative journeys. You could just read books on history. You could just get into other cultures in different other ways. You could read
Okay.
novels. Like stories themselves are also a Sagittarian thing because they still give you a journey and a perspective.
It's
But make
true.
it
And I
something that you're
do.
not used to.
Okay. Do you maybe like you can recommend me books later if
Yeah,
you have like any ideas? I
yeah,
don't know if you do or not, but if you
I
do,
do.
I would. Oh, okay. That was that was a quick answer. All right. Then we will be talking later then.
Awesome.
All right, got about 9 minutes left. Do you have any questions for him, Kim?
Real again, everything was really straightforward. You're very good at explaining this. Like I kind of saw this big chart with all of the strings going everywhere and was just kind of a little intimidated at first just because I don't understand how this works. I have no idea. But I feel like you explained it in such a way where I'm like kind of getting like the outline of like how this works.
Well, I'm glad,
Like
yeah,
I
because that's really the objective. It's super ultra complicated. It's crazy,
oh
you
yeah.
know.
Yeah, exactly. But you're
You're
kind of explaining things to me in a way that I can understand, and I genuinely appreciate that.
good. I'm glad, yeah.
All
You'd
right.
be an excellent teacher.
Oh, well, thank you.
Of course.
Right. Well, if there's no other questions, I thank you for joining us here. And thank you for watching at home. If you can resonate, leave something in the comments, give us a like and subscribe. I'd really appreciate that. And have a good day.
Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.